Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me,
Hey,
Albert.
hey, thanks for joining us. Thanks for
Yeah.
supporting the Bitcoin Olympics.
Oh yeah, of course. This is like,
Uh,
I've been in Bitcoin since man, almost a decade now. And uh, back in the old days, like there was a lot of like sort of like app developers kind of like working on it. And then there was like a dark ages, and now there's like a renaissance happening again, which is awesome. And like the fact that there even is a Bitcoin Olympics was like unthinkable even just a couple years ago. So kudos to you and everyone who showed up for this. This is basically like the beginning of Bitcoin in a way, in terms of building on top of it in earnest. So this is really awesome.
it was like everyone was preparing for today, right? The good and the
Yeah,
bad. The bad, like you said, there was dark ages and it's a renaissance, and now we're really going to begin. Yeah,
totally. By the way, do you mind if we add Jason slash
sure.
WoBuddy
Yeah,
to the
let's
screen, because
do it.
he might screen share some stuff.
Let's
Um
do it. Let's do it. He's also
Sorry, one
coming on
sec.
next week too, right? Just to make sure.
Yeah, he is. One
Yes, sir.
moment. I'm gonna give him the Zoom link.
Excellent.
And how much time do we have? Just so I know how concise
We
I need
we
to be.
we have 27 minutes left. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
I'm
cool.
sort of regretting making these half hour because everyone has so much
Yeah.
awesome information. I feel like it should
Yeah.
have been like 45 minutes. Um,
Yeah. No,
but
this one's gonna be fun. This one's gonna be a lot of fun. So I hope everyone's kind of tuned in and ready.
yeah, absolutely. So
So Jason's joining the Zoom now, I believe, if he hasn't already.
are you in the Patrick, are you in the Twitter spaces? If not, like maybe you can jump on and we'll put you on speaker. You can put on mute. That way we have more listeners for you.
Oh, I'm on my phone because my computer
Oh,
broke
okay.
and I was
You're
kind
on
of
your phone.
scrambling.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine. All
Um,
good.
so I don't think
It's,
I can do both. Sorry.
like luckily we have a
All right.
bunch of um speakers
Yeah.
who are on there, so thank you to them.
Yeah.
You don't
So
have to do.
how many people are tuned in right now? Because I want to make like good use of people's time, and I'm ready to get going whenever you are.
I don't know. There's like at least 100. Like I'm scrolling down. There's a lot of people in tourist space. We're streaming on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on other channels. So there should be a good
Great.
amount of people. Thanks to
Awesome.
speakers pitching in and
Cool.
marketing this. So let's get started. I mean, maybe share a little bit about your like a real quick, rundown of how you got here and then end up on why one BTC dot news.
Yeah, I've been in Bitcoin for past, I've been interested in for the past like 10 years. I've been working in it for the past six. Um, uh, I was previously head of growth at Blockstack, which sort of decentralized into the Stacks ecosystem, and I've been uh, running Freehold, which kind of like does both investing, but also like mainly kind of building out new tools and like products that I think will be impactful, just generally. Uh, so we've done a bunch of experiments, and our most recent one is most recent experiment is this project called OneBTC.news. And do you mind if I just go into what it is?
Yeah, do it. Go
Cool.
for it.
And
This is
and
why we're
and
here.
yeah, and I have Jason, my colleague here. He might help with some like showing some like previews of like the actual product that's being developed right now. So
Yeah.
assuming everyone's pretty.
First, maybe we should do like a preview that way. Um, but try to because not everyone's on the visual. Um, so try
No
to
worries.
be as
Yeah,
descriptive as possible.
yeah. No. Yeah, no worries. I think Jason can pull it up in like a minute. I think that would work. Um, and so I'm assuming people are pretty familiar with ordinals. Uh, so ordinals are basically a way a way to inscribe text, video, audio, media into Bitcoin for the first time. Uh, People really didn't think this was like possible until it happened. So this is like a pretty new development. Um, and what's interesting is that Bitcoin for the past, I don't know, 14 years had been just known as peer-to-peer cash and really just hard money, like the hardest money around, the hardest money in the universe. Um, and so, it's like it has this like really, really good value prop as hard money. Uh, but Ordinals came along and added the second value prop, which I actually think makes it a lot more valuable, which is hard media. And what that hard media is you inscribe something into Bitcoin and you cannot uninscribe it. That is like written in stone, you can't wipe that away, right? So I thought that was like, to me, I'd been like thinking about this for like 8 years and never really thought it was like fully possible in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is you can only put so much information into Bitcoin. Like I thought you could only put like a few kilobytes of data um, into Bitcoin, and then Ordinals came along and it's like, oh, you can actually put a lot more, a lot more. And so people were putting like images into Ordinals, and there's a lot of like NFT like behavior happening, which is really cool. But there was like no standard for creating there's no like news standard for like inscribing the news into Ordinals, because after all, it's almost like where you have this like printing press invention, where instead of like propagating a lot of media, uh, or replicating a lot of media after it had only been able to be like written by monks or something like that, uh, and that had a huge impact on humanity, the printing press. I think like the next stage of like immutable media is honestly just as important in my opinion. I think we're at the very beginning of that trend. So what Jason has shown here is basically a news feed of this is a raw news feed. This isn't curated, just a raw news feed of
I,
news that.
I like I like how you guys use Bitcoin Orange for the headers.
Yeah,
Very
thanks.
nice touch. Very nice touch.
Yeah, so this is like all the news that's fit to inscribe, right? Like you can't wipe away this history, which I think makes it a lot more powerful, and sort of makes it like the I think it's like a potential source of truth for a global sort of geopolitical network. Just like uh, you know, like China has like the CCP as their source of truth. Uh, the Western world has New York Times, their source of truth, and now the crypto world has BTC as its source of truth. So you can add an editorial layer on top of this. Like not all news is factual. Obviously, anyone can write anything, but the fact that this is immutable, I think, is really important. There's a lot of like quote unquote dark history, and in history, like you go back like hundreds of years. There's so many stories that hadn't been told, either because their stories were destroyed, but people couldn't say anything. And now this is like a chance for Bitcoiners to tell their own story in a way that can't be tampered with, can't be distorted, and will stand the test of time. Like people 100 years from now will see what people were talking about and what was going on during this historic time. And I think there's like no better time than now to have started something like this, because you have like the banking crisis, and where like the Fed is like making moves based on like their feelings, and that starkly contrasts something like Bitcoin. And what we're doing is what we're doing along with the community is like documenting what people are saying, what's being written, and doing it in a way that again cannot be wiped away. So
I just got some
works.
chills. Like let me jump in for a second here. I just got
Yeah.
some chills listening to this, because we've talked about this a few times and it's like slowly sinking in. But I just had an epiphany just now. This is an awesome thing about these talks, right? Is you never know when like the what you hear from somebody else is that last drop in the bucket, so to speak, that makes your mind overflow and like,
Mm, mm,
oh, oh man, I think I know what he's talking about, right?
mm.
And it, from what you just described to me is, I think it's no secret by now that different media channels are controlled by different types of special interest groups, right?
Yeah,
And so maybe for the first time ever, we have one BTC.news. It could finally be truths from different types, like voices from different angles, from different perspectives, can finally be heard. Right? So if there's a way,
totally.
and that is amazing in itself, because I don't really want to get into discussion of who's right, who's wrong, but
Of
I think
course.
we could all agree, if there's something happening, but people from several different cultures were all on one BTC.news and expressed that same event from their point of view.
Yeah,
OMG, that's like first time ever, like that could be done like on a public and mass level, right? Because up to
absolutely.
date,
Yeah.
I can't really think of any news channel that is objective like that.
Well, it's funny. Like it's funny.
That's
Like
why I just got chills listening to what you're doing here. This is super awesome.
that's awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, like the reality is, like the United States only makes up 4% of the population and 23% of the GDP of the global economy. Yet, overwhelmingly, its news is produced by like several hundred people that basically like live in Brooklyn. Like, okay, these voices do not represent a global community of diverse views. Like, in fact, if anything, they're highly likely to have groupthink, and they are they're sort of like downstream of this like fiat information supply chain. Um, and I think what's interesting about this is that if like if China, like as an example, like uh, and I'm not saying any of these sort of geopolitical poles are any worse or better than the other. They're just different. I'm just kind of explaining. But
Right,
if
right.
China has if China has state-run media, well then the U.S. and the West have media-run state, and crypto has network-mediated media. So basically, like sort of like decentralized truth. And what's interesting here is that for the first time, as opposed to with uh, uh, sort of like the CCP and NYT, you have uh, this idea of checkable facts as opposed to fact checkers. So, for example, like the Washington Post has a fact checker who's constantly wrong and getting fact checked by community notes on Twitter, and it's kind of hilarious because it's like this is obviously like a mouthpiece for someone's agenda. That's like it's like so obviously wrong on so many things um, that they're getting fact checked by community notes. Um,
So
but
so
in
actually, let me
in
jump in if I can for just 1 second. For
yeah, sure.
because some people are just joining us just now in the middle of this. This is really, really I feel it's going to be disruptive, sort of like Bitcoin, because when Bitcoin came about over 10 years ago, there's already a lot of pent up angst and frustration with the
Yeah.
financial system, right? So this peer to peer thing, just like there's like sort of like a dam that's building up, like culturally, like we're fed up with it, but there's no outlet, there's no solution, and comes Bitcoin, boom, right? And then so one BTC.news is sort of like that, but sort of like from a from a media perspective, right? People, there's a lot of pent up frustration. Like obviously this news is like not objective, and we're just like hearing one side of the story. But and there's also that sort of like the same kind of frustration being built up on this aspect. And now comes one BTC news. So I feel like you said, it's at the beginning, but when people realize what you're doing here is also going to become like that release valve.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely. I mean, like, but
is that sort of what we're doing here? This is, let's catch
yeah,
people up, especially for the ones that are just joining. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I mean, like, Bitcoin is buying Bitcoin is more a vote of no confidence on the current sort of like uh, elected like the current like mismanagement, like the profligate spending from the Treasury and the Fed, and Bitcoin is basically a vote of no confidence there. It's actually the absolute vote. You're voting with your money, not voting with your ballot. The fact that Bitcoin has become such an economic power, the financialization of Bitcoin secures the moral innovation, which is free, like hard free money, like free as in freedom. Hard free money secures free speech. Free speech secures things like ideas being transferred, free markets, things like that. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. The point I was going to make earlier, just very briefly, is like, and we'll get into like how all this works, like very, very briefly, because I think even for someone that's non-technical, it's worth noting. Basically, this is like the beginning of our transitioning from fact checkers to checkable facts. So what do I mean by that? In like the traditional fiat information supply chain, you have news that's given to you. Say sources say, experts say that yada 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 happened, and then you basically just take the news as word for it. With 1BTC.news, at the very beginning, what you're doing is you have three things that are pretty valuable. One is like for historically valuable, and also historically valuable at first, and then potentially valuable for other reasons later. You have one, a signature of who the author was, so you know for sure this author was who they said they were. They can sign with their keys. They can sign with their Bitcoin key, sign with their Stacks key, whatever. So that's a cryptographic signature. You also have a hash of the data that's inscribed. So it's like, that what was inscribed is there for sure and has not been edited or redacted. A lot of things in history have been deleted or redacted, etc. And the internet, like, the internet has a memory, obviously, but it's not like necessarily as immutable as Bitcoin. Then lastly, you have a timestamp of when it was said. Saying something 1 month before, saying like a coronavirus could go exponential 1 month before it goes exponential. Having that timestamp is really important because that brings credibility to what you had said. And what I think is going to be interesting here is I think people are going to put stuff like decentralized inflation data directly in here, because it's something that usually gets suppressed. So like imagine like getting all the transactional data from point of sale at like Stripe, or using something like Trueflation, which is like a decentralized inflation monitor that gives inflation numbers every day, and just inscribing that to Bitcoin. That would be huge, because that would be a source of truth for all people around the world, and they can know exactly who said it, where the data came from, when it was put in there, what it was saying, yada yada. You could build all sorts of other sources of truth. Okay, so I just think that's actually like a huge thing that people aren't anticipating, but that is like going to happen. Okay, so let's go to Jason. Do you mind going to the Ordinal News Standard sort of tab? Thanks. So yeah,
Patrick,
you go to the
just quick time check. We have about 10 minutes left in the session, so let's save some time for some of your wishes.
I'll do like 1 minute and then stop. All right, if we click into read the docs, so this is like the open source kind of like documentation. Anyone can like add to this or whatever. Jason, do you want to kind of just like describe sort of how this works, just from what's happening here, like how the operations work? Thanks.
Yeah, so you can think of this in two layers, really. So you have one is the Ordinal News Standard, which you can find at inscribe.news or in the documentation that I have up here. It's based on the SATS names standard as well. So we use the protocol P tag to identify what we're doing. We have an operation that we can do from there. And then you can include some additional information. So this is really all that your news is made up of. But the body itself is where it gets interesting, because you can include text, markdown, or HTML, And as a result, we can do some fun things with it. So as far as the Ordinal News Standard is concerned, there is an API that will not only like index all the different inscriptions, but give you the chance to see what the actual converted data would look like. And what I mean by that is with one BTC.news, for example, if you click into any of those articles, this data that you see on the page is loaded from the chain. So that's kind of the beauty of it, is that like this is that permanent source of information. You know, it's immutable in that sense. So as we have these different things, we can show off a lot of different information in really clean formats, and give people a chance to have that voice. And one of the cool things that I wanted to highlight really quick too, that I like, is the fact that like one BTC.news is going to be its own interpretation of the standard, but the standard is open to everybody. So if there is a different take that you have, or if there's different news you want to inscribe, or you want to create your own feed, all of that is available and can be built on top of that open source Ordinal News Standard.
Wow, super cool, super cool. Thanks for sharing that, Jason. Yeah, I encourage everyone to go to 1btc.news, 1btc.news. So with that said, this is just the beginning of this. I feel like it's going to become a whole ecosystem around this 1btc.news. So between now and the fruition of the vision, Patrick, can you share with our audience, the builders who are participating in the hackathon, what they could build? Like, if you had more time, what would you build before the next one having that can
sure.
this initiative? Let's inspire some people to build this, and maybe you can mention how they would qualify for the prizes. And yeah, and,
Sure.
next week Jason's going to come on again, right, and help people hit the ground running. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so I mean, we would welcome help, like our the folks who were kind of working on this right now would love just general help for one, I would say. And what we're sort of building is we want to build something that shows like the immutable newsfeed, but is ranked on a daily basis based on what real Bitcoiners think. So they can like thumbs up, thumbs down, and like comment on things. And the kind of idea we have is like and we would love help on this, or just even like an MVP. I mean, I would give it like a few $1,000s in Bitcoin, and like open to being generous there, on kind of accelerating this. But like the idea that I think would be really cool is basically like a Hacker News style upvoting site where the top news is based on a combination of time since that news was inscribed. So if something was inscribed today, it's more likely to appear on the front page. A combination of that and sort of like the power of the Bitcoin holdings. So if a bunch of people are thumbs upping an article and they're representing 10 million, like the aggregate, like $10 million worth of Bitcoin, and they've been holding that Bitcoin for some time, that's like a clear signal that real Bitcoiners value that over another thing. So there's this concept called coin age, which is basically the amount of Bitcoin you have multiplied by the time since you began holding it. And you could do this by basically just like monitoring UTXOs, I believe. And if I get anything wrong, Jason, just step in. I think this would create something that is like basically like a simple, understandable sort of protocol that has no proprietary data, no proprietary algorithm. There's nothing being hidden. It's like very obvious what the game is. The game is accumulate a lot of Bitcoin and show what you value in terms of like the news items. in terms of thumbs upping and thumbs downing, and applying your coinage score to basically the ranking algorithm. So if like 5 people are holding 5 Bitcoin and they've been holding it for 10 days, um, and they all vote on one article, and someone else with just 1 Bitcoin who's only been holding it for 1 day downvotes it, well, that thing actually is going to be upvoted like pretty high. Whereas if someone comes in with a lot of Bitcoin and they've been holding it for a while, they could like sort of downvote something. So it kind of is this like game of like voicing your opinion with skin in the game. Why I think that's valuable is because basically the culture, there's a lot of good things with quote unquote Bitcoin maximalist culture. There's a lot of good economic theory. There's a lot of good stuff. But one of the bad things is that a lot of the behavior has been basically shaped by the Twitter algorithm. And what I mean by that is a bunch of people who really don't own a lot of Bitcoin have joined the sort of like have joined the quote unquote Bitcoin maximalist group and signal behavior that Satoshi Nakamoto would have never ever done in terms of like just being a jerk or not being open to innovation, things like that. And that is because Twitter rewards the sarcastic remark, the dunk, the quote tweet, yada yada. So my theory is that actually most maximalists don't own a lot of Bitcoin, and I know this because I'm friends with a lot of them. A lot of them just simply don't own a lot of Bitcoin, and so instead of playing wealth games, they play status games on Twitter. And what I want to do is kind of like create a wealth game that is like a bit like somewhat egalitarian in the sense that people can hold for a long time and get their coinage up, but also create signal on what real Bitcoiners really think, not the fake ones that are kind of like cosplaying as Bitcoiners and playing status games. I want to know what the people playing wealth games are saying, because they represent the crypto capital geopolitical pool, and that makes something like this product more valuable as a function.
I think that's really exciting, Patrick, because it's you're really focused on, like, who your market is, right? And it almost seems like this is a media channel built first for people who have Bitcoin, right? Which I think is super exciting. I think the number that you gave me was what was it, like over 1 million people have at least 1 Bitcoin. So even if we have like 5%, like 50,000 people voting up and down, that's already like a massive that definitely has statistical significance in terms of like opinions. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, but you can come in with any amount of Bitcoin. Like the idea we're thinking is like you can come in with any amount of Bitcoin and be like, okay,
multiplied by time.
Exactly. There could be an interesting thing where like there's some sort of like global sort of like network kind of government where you sort of like collapse like the population and the Senate into like sort of like one group, and it's just every Bitcoin holder that holds 1 Bitcoin and they like vote on things, they could use the app to do that. That's kind of like a whimsical idea, but would be a potentially interesting one. But that's not what we're building right now.
So we're up on time. Can you give some encouraging words to the builders out there to join this, not just join the hackathon, but also build those wish list items? Let's summarize. And
yeah, definitely.
Audience that Patrick and his team, they're going to come back next week to help you hit the ground running on some of these.
Yeah, definitely. So like the creator of the first kind of like mass consumer used internet browser, Mark Andreessen, when he first arrived in Silicon Valley in 1994, I believe, he was like, "Oh shoot, it's all over. I missed it. I missed the whole thing." And I think a lot of people kind of felt that way about Bitcoin. They're like, "Oh, it's over." What's actually really crazy is that it is 1994 basically right now, and we're at the very, very beginning. All the upside is ahead of us. So much knowledge can be applied to make new things. Like what we're learning is that actually very few people have experimented at all with Bitcoin in terms of what is possible. And I think specifically to the Ordinal news standard, which Jason went into with the docs there, which can be found at inscribe.news. I think there's an opportunity here to literally write history. So with very little effort, we've already gotten like over 250 news inscriptions in a pretty short period of time. And I think if people who care about free speech, people who care about free markets, free people, free ideas, should be. I think should be somewhat interested in sort of pushing this standard forward, because it's not owned by me, it's not owned by Jason. It's literally just owned by anyone who uses it, because it's just like a data format for news ordinals.
No, that is so refreshing, because the free speech as we have it today is not really free speech, right? It's very like, you feel like you can't really say a lot, but on your platform, you can say whatever you want. It's going to be there forever, right? And then if you have Bitcoin times the amount of time you hold it, you can upvote or downvote it. So this is very exciting. This is super exciting, Patrick.
Yeah, and Jason, where's like the best place that folks can sort of like pitch in or contact us? Because we've been kind of been like working as like a little cloister by ourselves, and I haven't we haven't really opened things up too much, but it's like now's the time basically to open up.
Yeah, definitely. I think in the early stages now, it's really based around the inscribe.news standard. So what we have there is what we're calling the Ordinal news standard. We can definitely look into like anything that we want to do for 1BTC.news. We really want to generalize back to the standard. So if we're talking about having a signature that proves an author, or if we're talking about any additional features, they're really thought of in the scope of the standard. And then we want to bring an experience on top of that. So initially, everything can be found. There's actually a GitHub organization for Ordinal News. It should be linked in the documentation. If anybody wants to reach out through those channels or participate, I would definitely encourage that. The 1BTC.news source is closed at the moment, but I have a feeling once we get things a little more polished up and once we get this deployed, we might head in a different direction with that as well. And really just want to have anyone interested in this idea to reach out. So if you know me in any of my social channels, I'm generally found as WoBuddy. Happy to help with any questions or any ideas around. And I know we'll be doing a little more of a technical presentation next week. So happy to dig into that. And otherwise, just, check out the standard, try inscribing the news. It really is a neat experience to see how this works. And there are already a viewer, and then like the recent news feed that you see here could be replicated in other places. So we can have a lot of fun with it. So I'd say GitHub or just through any of the standard channels, Twitter, Discord, all the good stuff.
Super, super. And looking forward to your crash course next week, Jason. I'm really excited about that. And if you guys have a chance, pop into our Discord. It's going to get very exciting really fast.
I'm in it. Yeah, I'm already in it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
I'm excited to see what some of these builders are going to build on top of the 1BTC.news. And thanks for bringing the prize. It's quite nice.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the Ordinal news standard is free for all, and really appreciate you having us on. So thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.